Chapter 9. Confiscating the Ranch. Riker Kane stood waiting alongside behind his main cameraman Henry, his enthusiasm high as he prepared to shoot another video for his channel. Even with the hot Texas sun beat down on the shooting range, the camera crew moved around, setting up equipment and getting everything ready for the upcoming firearm testing. With countless video shoots over the years, everyone seemed to work in unison. It was almost as if Riker's easygoing smile and energetic demeanor were infectious, and his camera crew laughed as he cracked jokes and made funny faces at the camera. "Hey, here is one for you. Why did the gun instructor go to therapy?" Each of his crew thought about it till they just conceded, unable to come up with the correct answer. "Because he had too many triggers," Riker reveled, then quickly signaled he was ready to begin today's video. Quickly they all pulled together, and within seconds the cameras were recording as Riker walked toward Henry Will saying, "All right, folks, welcome back to Vanguard Ballistics. Today we've got something special for you," Riker announced to the camera, his excitement evident. "We've got a brand new shotgun that just hit the market and found its way to our bunker, and we're going to put it through its paces. But first, remember to subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on our explosive content." With the camera began rolling, Riker launched into his signature style, showcasing the firearm, explaining its features, and engaging his audience with his charismatic commentary. His camera crew captured every angle, ensuring that viewers would be able to see every detail of the gun. Raising the shotgun up to his shoulder, Riker paused. "What's wrong?" Henry asked, noticing Riker standing holding the shotgun, turning his head side to side. He thought Riker may have seen someone cross the safety lines, but after looking for himself and seeing nothing, he heard it also. Riker was about to fire the first shot, but the sound he heard caused shivers to run throughout his body. It was a chilling sound echoing across the range, the unmistakable clattering of weapons being cocked. Riker's smile faded as he turned to see a group of UN soldiers approaching, their rifles aimed directly at him and his crew. Just as Riker began lowering his shotgun, a shot rang out from the hilltop, striking Julia, another camera operator, in the abdomen, causing a large plume of blood to exit her backside. Instantaneously, all crewmen drew their sidearms while diving for cover, as panic spread among the crew as the UN soldiers barked orders, demanding that everyone get down on the ground. Riker's heart pounded in his chest, and he exchanged a tense look with Henry, who was also on the ground beside him just behind a large manhole cover they had used in a previous episode. The range that had once been filled with excitement was now shrouded in chaos and fear. As the UN soldiers began shouting conflicting commands in various accents, Riker's mind raced. He knew that this situation had escalated far beyond his control. He locked eyes with Henry, a silent agreement passing between them as they looked back at Julia, covered in her own blood, hardly moving, holding her stomach on the ground. "They must be on the ridge also. We know at least one is." Riker frantically spoke. Henry looked back at Julia with his mind racing. "We have to get her to cover and stop the bleeding or she will die." Riker didn't want to see any harm come to his crew, but he knew from his training as a veterinarian the wounds Julia had suffered would be fatal if she didn't get immediate treatment. Looking at the others hiding behind trees and other items left on the range from past episodes, Riker knew he had to put an end to the chaos before it escalated even further. Raising his shotgun above his head as he stood, Riker shouted, "We surrender!" Diving back down behind the manhole cover with Henry, chaos erupted as the staccato rhythm of gunfire resonated through the air. The acrid scent of burnt powder mingled with the metallic tang of lead, creating a sizzling sound of death that engulfed them. Blue-helmeted UN troops charged forward, their distinct headgear a stark contrast against the chaos of the firefight. In the midst of turmoil, Riker's keen eyes caught a glimpse of a lone blue helmet on the hillside. Reacting swiftly, he swung his weapon towards his target, the shotgun's report joining in on the violence. The double-aught buckshot leapt from the barrel, its deadly payload hurtling through the air. One pellet found its mark in the soldier's leg, causing him to lose his footing and tumble down the slope, heading straight in Riker's direction. Without hesitation, Riker adjusted his aim and pulling the trigger of the semi-automatic shotgun once more. The shotgun barked defiantly, sending a tighter pattern of shot directly into the soldier's chest as he rolled downhill. The double-aught led balls making deadly contact as the soldiers continued his descent, his body coming to rest with a heavy thud wrapping around the base of a large tree. "Did these guys receive any training?" Henry shouted. Dropping the empty shotgun, Riker pulled his pistol from the holster on his side, quickly taking aim center mass of another blue-helmeted UN soldier. "It doesn't look like it. They should have at least learned what cover is." Riker pulled the trigger, sending a 9mm round through the soldier's neck. The firefight's intensity seemed to stretch time, each moment drawn out as if in a surreal dreamscape. The cracks of gunfire echoed, mingling with the shouts and screams that filled the air. Trapped within the storm of battle, every second felt like an eternity, yet the reality was that the conflict had raged for only a matter of minutes. While the smoke began to clear and chaos subsided, Riker and Henry emerged from their cover, wariness etched onto their faces. Amidst the aftermath of the firefight, a scene of destruction unfolded before them. Fallen bodies lay still, their once imposing presence reduced to lifeless forms. Riker and Henry pressed forward, weapons at the ready, the fallen soldiers' gear now becoming theirs. Gathering arms and ammunition from the fallen and wounded, they moved methodically, ensuring that the threat had been neutralized, while their fellow crew members stood fast, providing cover and support as Riker and Henry collected their newfound resources. Riker and Henry cautiously approached the fallen blue-helmeted UN soldier, suffering from Riker shooting him in the neck. The tension in the air grew. The man struggled, attempting to raise his pistol in a desperate last effort. Spotting the threat, Riker tightened his grip on his weapon and prepared to fire, his finger hovering over the trigger. But just as he was about to end the threat, the man exploded. Back a few hundred feet, one of the crew members had retrieved the formidable Golden Barrett 5th caliber rifle from Matt's truck to provide crucial cover fire. Watching closely, he patiently awaited for the next threat, and as he spotted Riker and Henry approaching the wounded soldier raising his pistol, he took the shot. The rifle's powerful report echoed through the area as the shot found its target with undeniable accuracy. The impact of the shot resulted in blood and fragments spraying outward, much of which landed on Riker. The unforeseen splatter of blood and gore prompted feelings of surprise and exasperation from Riker. In a moment that briefly cut through the intensity of the situation, he couldn't help but direct his incredulous reaction at his crew member with the Barrett. His voice carried a blend of disbelief and a touch of humor as he exclaimed, "Really, Guy?" Riker's mind began to clear from the shock and chaos of battle. Looking around, he surveyed the scene and pieced together the situation. In doing so, the realization hit him like a shockwave. If the UN soldiers were here on the range, it was likely that they had also infiltrated the office. A surge of urgency overtook him as he assessed the dire circumstances. Turning his attention back to his remaining crew, Riker's heart weighed heavy as he saw the toll the battle had taken. His gaze fell upon Julia, who had fought valiantly despite her fatal wound, laying motionless with her pistols slide-locked back in hand. The sight of her passing served as a grim reminder of the gravity of their situation. With his crew now down to just a fraction of its original size, and the threat to their loved ones loomed large, Riker knew they had to act now. Addressing his surviving crew members, Riker's voice carried, "We can't stay here. They've hit us, and I'm certain they're at the offices too. Our families are in danger. Henry and I are heading to the offices. Take whatever you need and gather your families. We'll regroup at the bunker. Move, move." Amongst the somber scene, everyone grappled with the heavy task of leaving behind fallen crew members and friends. The fallen lay where they had fought valiantly, a painful reminder of the cost of their resistance. Yet a shared understanding prevailed. There was no time for mourning. Riker and Henry plunged into the dense cedar woods, with their pace showing the urgency of the situation. Foliage around them seemed to thicken, as if the very forest was attempting to prevent them from their mission. With each stride, they left behind the fallen soldiers and their fallen crew members, their hearts heavy with unyielding resolve. They moved, fueled by the need to reach Vanguard headquarters undetected. There was no time for hesitation. They were acutely aware that their lives and the lives of their loved ones depended on their ability to remain unseen. Adrenaline surged through their veins, pushing them forward as they traversed the rugged terrain. 2 hills had loomed before them with only one remaining, the daunting obstacles between the range and their ultimate destination. Riker and Henry spared no effort, their muscles straining as they ascended and descended each elevation. The physical exertion seemed to mirror their mental state, focused, determined, and driven by an unrelenting desire to survive. As they pressed on, thoughts raced through Riker's mind. He searched desperately for a strategy, a glimmer of hope to navigate this unanticipated nightmare. The weight of responsibility bore down on him, but he refused to let it crush his spirit. With each step, he clung to the belief that there had to be a way out, a path to safety for himself, Henry, and the remnants of his crew. Silently as possible, they maneuvered through the dense cedar brush, their pace unyielding despite the searing Texas heat. Over the 2 hills they moved, focused on reaching Vanguard headquarters without detection, their minds consumed by strategies for survival in the face of this unforeseen nightmare. Nearing the crest of the final hill, they slowed, cautious not to breach the clearing prematurely. Crawling beneath a towering cedar, they positioned themselves in the shade, their senses attuned to the looming threat ahead. Before them, the scene confirmed their worst fears. Distinct blue helmets marked the UN soldiers who had encroached upon their domain. No less than 15 soldiers occupied the clearing with multiple white vehicles marked with the letters SCN in blue on the side. Riker and Henry watched as soldiers walked all around their headquarters. They could see the rest of Vanguard staff being rounded up, hands bound by soldiers in blue helmets. Riker's fists clenched in anger and frustration. He had always believed in finding peaceful resolutions, in dialogue over violence. But now, facing the reality of the situation, he knew that world he had known had crumbled, replaced by a new and terrifying order. As he watched the UN soldiers load his staff onto a bus, Riker's heartache turned to fury. Stickers declaring their property as confiscated were slapped onto his belongings. He felt powerless, angry, and desperate for a way to fight back. Riker and Henry exchanged a glance, a shared understanding passing between them, an unspoken pact to see this through. But that only lasted till Henry saw something. "Shit, Riker, look. They have Mir." Henry's voice cracked as he pointed, his eyes locking onto Riker's wife, Mir. Mir stood fiercely confronting one of the blue-helmeted soldiers as he spoke on the radio, delivering a resounding slap before being forcibly restrained. Without a second thought, panic surged through Riker's veins, drowning out reason. In a frantic, desperate move, he abandoned his pistol and rifle, a rash decision fueled by his need to reach Mir's side. "Hold on!" Henry shouted, as he attempted to grab Riker and pull him back down, only finding he was already just out of reach. "I've got to get to her." The words burst from Riker's lips, his voice full of fear as he left everything behind, propelled solely by the overpowering instinct to protect his wife. In that charged moment, all calculations and strategies were discarded, replaced by raw emotion and an unwavering drive to rescue the woman he loved. He knew that he was putting himself at risk, but the pain and rage he felt were overwhelming. The UN soldiers spotted him instantly, their shouts reverberating in a disorienting chorus of different accents. Riker stood his ground, his gaze fixed on the UN soldier holding Mir. He attempted to negotiate. "Take all the weapons and ammunition. We will even load them for you. Just let everyone go," Riker pleaded after following their commands to halt, with his hands held high above his head. "Mr. Kane, you have no, how do you say, negotiating power," the person who was clearly in charge informed him. "Riker, run!" Mir shouted to the point where her voice crackled. "Oh, what do we have here?" the man in charge asked while looking at a clipboard. "This must be Meredith, no?" he asked, grabbing underneath Mir's chin, moving her head back and forth. "Leave her alone, we can work things out. Just take everything and go. The place is yours, we will leave." Riker begged once again. "Well, Mr. Kane, We have a bit of a problem, you see. You killed my men? Or is the sergeant on the other end of this radio lying? Looks to me there should be some kind of reparations for you actions, don't you think? I offer you everything I own if you only let... Riker once again attempted to plead for the release of his loved ones, but his hopes were shattered in an instant. Without an ounce of emotion, the man raised his pistol, firing a single shot, cutting through the air like a cruel punctuation mark. Riker watched as Mir crumpled to the ground, a life cut short by a merciless executioner. His heart shattered along with her body, and a guttural scream tore from his throat. Everything around him seemed to blur as he reached for his pistol, only to remember that he had left it behind. In that moment, Riker felt a rush of desperation, not caring if he lived or died. All he cared about was avenging the love he had lost. In one fluid motion, Riker jumped to his feet, his hand gripping a custom-made fixed blade knife from Ironhead Forge. Henry's voice echoed behind him, pleading for him to stop, knowing the futility of his actions. The UN soldiers shouted orders, their weapons trained on Riker. But he was beyond reason, beyond fear. The world had taken everything from him, and in that moment, he was ready to take everything from the world. Before Riker reached the UN soldiers, vehicles raced in from around the drive, encircling the UN soldiers. A brief firefight ensued, followed by the blue helmets realizing that they were outmatched. Their defiance swiftly gave way to surrender as reality of their situation set in. All around them, dust saturated the air from the fast-moving vehicles entering to fight. Undeterred by the battle, Riker sought out his wife's killer. Walking through the smoke as if sent by hell, he located him. The one who had killed Mir had survived the attack, albeit wounded. Riker's rage burned hotter than ever as he approached the wounded soldier. His fingers clenched around the Damascus blade, and with a swift, brutal motion, he slashed the soldier's throat as his mouth opened to plead for his life. As he gagged on his own blood, Riker stared into his eyes as he drove the blade through his ear canal. He turned towards his wife, his heart shattering into a million pieces as he sank to his knees. Tears streamed down his face, mingling with the dirt and sweat that clung to his skin. Gently, as if holding on to a fragile dream, he lifted her lifeless form, cradling her against his chest, his hands trembling with disbelief. The weight of her absence pressed down on him, a crushing reality he couldn't escape. Carrying her inside, every step felt like an eternity, each one a painful reminder of the life that had been torn away. The others moved around him, their footsteps muted by the overwhelming grief that hung heavy in the air. Blue-helmeted soldiers, once foreign and distant, now represented the embodiment of his worst nightmares. Time became an abstract concept, losing all meaning as he sat in her office, the room that had once been a sanctuary for their shared dreams and laughter, now a haunting chamber of memories. He clung to her, as if by sheer willpower he could bring her back, his tears falling onto her lifeless body. Henry's presence brought a bittersweet comfort, a reminder that he wasn't alone in this nightmare. "Riker." His voice was barely a whisper, filled with sorrow and compassion. "We have to go. More of them could be coming." Riker's gaze remained locked on his Mir's face, his fingers tracing the contours of her features, as if memorizing them all over again. "I can't leave her," he choked out, his voice strained with a pain that ran deeper than words could express. His best friend's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he knelt beside him. "I know," he said softly, his voice breaking. "I know, but we can't let her sacrifice be in vain. We have to keep fighting." Riker's face contorted with anger consuming him. The room seemed to close in around him, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. "They took everything from us," he whispered, his voice quivering. "I can't let them get away with it." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, a fire ignited in Riker's eyes. He looked up at his best friend, his anguish transforming into a steely determination. "We'll make them pay," he said, his voice low and steady. "For Mir. For all of us." His best friend nodded, his own tears falling freely now. "She would want us to fight back," he said, his voice heavy with grief and resolve. "Let's do it for her." With a heavy heart, Riker gently laid his wife's body down, his fingers lingering on her cheek for a moment before he stood. The weight of his grief was now matched by the weight of his fight. As he stepped outside, the world around him felt surreal, a landscape forever altered by tragedy. And as he walked away from the room that held the echoes of their love, he carried her memory with him, a beacon of strength in the darkness that had enveloped their lives. Riker's focus shifted back to his mirror. He dropped to his knees beside her lifeless body, tears streaming down his face as he cradled her. Time seemed to stand still as grief consumed him, and the weight of his loss was too heavy to bear. Hours passed, and the sun dipped below the horizon. Amidst the heart-wrenching scene, Riker's closest friend entered, a silent pillar of support in the face of unimaginable loss. The room seemed to hold its breath, weighted by grief and shattered hopes. Grief transformed into a fierceness, fueled by a burning need to make them pay. With a solemn nod, Riker agreed, the weight of their situation heavy on his shoulders. "Okay," was the only word Riker uttered in response. Just outside the headquarters, Riker jumped on and brought Excavator to life. Its engine's black smoke filled the air as he skillfully maneuvered the heavy machinery, removing earth to create a fitting resting place for his beloved wife. The once pristine flower bed encircling the flagpole was transformed into a solemn grave, a tribute to the care and devotion she had poured into it. The memories of her daily tending, the pride she took in nurturing the blossoms, all echoed in his mind as he worked. Each scoop of earth was a bittersweet reminder of the life they had shared. The rhythm of the excavator's mechanical arm mirrored the rhythm of his heart, both heavy and turning hard. Time seemed to blur as minutes passed as Riker worked finishing up the excavation. The presence of others provided a silent support, their grief a shared burden that no words could ease. As the excavation came to an end, the collective purpose shifted. Mir, now wrapped in pristine white cotton sheets, lay ready for her final rest. The simple purity of the fabric contrasted with the complex emotions that enveloped the moment. They handled her with utmost care, their movements gentle, as if honoring not just her life, but the depth of their connection. In the stillness of the day, surrounded by the memory-laden flower bed and the proud flagpole, Riker and the others lowered her body into the earth. The layers of soil embraced her form, creating a cocoon of solace and peace. A tear glistened on Riker's cheek as he stood there, his heart heavy with the weight of farewell. The scene was a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of love. They stood together in the blazing heat, laying Mir to rest in the earth she had cherished greatly. The U.S. flag fluttered overhead, a silent promise of strength and unity, while their movements were that of sorrow. Close to finishing, a cool breeze swept through the flower bed. "Mir?" Riker asked softly, while others took it as a gentle reminder of life's persistence in the face of tragedy. It whispered secrets of resilience, carrying their pain on the path they now walked, a path of vengeance and unbreakable camaraderie. With Mir in her final resting spot, Riker's focus turned to a securing supply and planning for the future. The one thing he figured out long ago is to survive you need more than just weapons and supplies. You needed people. Upon discovering the obliteration of his channels across every online platform, Riker swiftly turned to an alternate email account, one he used to reach out to the loyal Vanguard members who had subscribed to his content. The email was brief, a beacon of rallying hope amidst the chaos. After emailing those who had subscribed to his channel, Riker moved to his next list. With a heavy heart, he accessed a digital document known as his Go List. This list, a compilation he had fervently prayed would remain untouched, consisted of a select cadre of military veterans and his closest confidants. They were the bedrock upon which he intended to forge a militarized iteration of the Vanguard, a gathering of formidable allies ready to unite against the encroaching threat. Envisioned during a time of tranquility, the group's purpose now transformed from a distant contingency plan to a stark reality. Each name on that list carried the weight of shared history and trust. Their designated rendezvous point was a hidden bunker, a sanctuary nestled far from civilization, stocked with essential supplies. It was a refuge conceived in anticipation of the unforeseen, a testament to Riker's foresight. Once all their supplies were loaded onto the vehicles, Riker exchanged a lingering, bittersweet gaze with the spot where Mir now rested, a final farewell before their departure. The weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on his heart. With a purposeful nod, he signaled for the convoy to set in motion. Engines rumbled to life. The sun beat down mercilessly, intensifying the hot Texas air. As they pulled away, an unexpected twist unfolded, a twist that nature itself seemed to orchestrate. To their astonishment, most of their vehicles experienced sudden shutdowns, their once menacing engines silenced. In a surreal turn of events, sparks danced like fireflies amidst the vehicle's electronics, revealing the extent of the disruption. A bemused expression crossed Riker's face as he surveyed the scene from the running board of the 5-ton truck. Quickly, he slapped against the truck with his free hand while commanding, "Stop! Stop the truck!"